Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's session. I'm excited to have you all here as we explore the fascinating world of psychology. Today, we will be focusing on the topic of motivation, which is a crucial aspect of understanding human behavior. This is part of our course BPCC 101, Introduction to Psychology, specifically Unit 8. Throughout this presentation, we'll cover the key concepts of motivation, its types, and how it influences our actions. So, let's get started and dive into the intriguing subject of motivation. Today, we're going to explore the concept of motivation, which is essentially the inner force or process that initiates, directs, and sustains goal-oriented behavior. When we talk about motivation, we're referring to what drives us to act in certain ways. Interestingly, the word motivation comes from the Latin word mover, which means to move. So, fundamentally, motivation is about movement. It's what pushes us forward. Understanding motivation helps us see why individuals act the way they do, why they persist in certain pursuits, or why they might stop engaging in specific behaviors. For example, a student studying hard to achieve good grades is driven by a goal-oriented motivation. It's this internal push that keeps them focused and persistent. Motivation is a dynamic internal state. It's not static, but constantly changing. It propels us into action and helps us meet both our biological needs, like hunger or safety, and our psychological needs, such as achievement or recognition. Every act you can think of, from satisfying hunger to striving for success, is influenced by motivation. In essence, motivation is the key factor behind all purposeful human behavior. It explains why we do what we do, and understanding it is crucial to understanding human actions overall. Let's explore the concept and nature of motivation. Motivation, simply put, is the inner force that initiates and sustains our behavior toward a goal. The word itself comes from the Latin mover, which means to move. This helps us understand that motivation is essentially what pushes us into action and keeps us going. It explains why we act in certain ways, why we persist when faced with challenges, or why sometimes we stop altogether. Motivation is a blend of internal drives, things like hunger, curiosity, or ambition, and external rewards, such as praise or money. So, in simple terms, it's what drives us and guides us toward what we want to achieve. Now, let's look at the elements of motivation. It's a continuous process involving needs, drives, and satisfaction. First, we have needs. These are deficiencies or desires. They can be biological, like needing food, or psychological, such as the desire for achievement. Next is the drive, which is an inner tension or energy that motivates us to act to fulfill that need. Think of it as the push that compels us to do something. Then there's the goal, the specific object or outcome we aim for that helps reduce that tension and satisfy the need. Finally, external incentives come into play. These are rewards from outside, like recognition or success, which encourage us to keep putting in effort. Altogether, motivation is this ongoing cycle of perceiving a need, experiencing a drive, working toward a goal, and being influenced by external incentives. It's fundamental to understanding human behavior and how we move toward our objectives. Let's explore the concept and nature of motivation. Motivation is essentially what drives us to act. It has some key characteristics that help us understand it better. First, it is goal-directed, meaning we're always focused on achieving something specific. Whether it's studying for an exam or pursuing a hobby, our actions are aimed at reaching a goal. Second, motivation is dynamic. It changes over time and varies depending on different situations. What motivates us today might be different tomorrow. Third, it is continuous. Once we satisfy a certain need or goal, new motives tend to emerge, keeping us moving forward. And lastly, motivation is individual. Different people are motivated by different things, depending on their personal preferences, experiences, and needs. Now let's look at the cycle of motivation. It starts with a need arising within us, which creates a drive to fulfill that need. This drive then pushes us to engage in goal-directed behavior, actions aimed at satisfying the need. When we achieve the goal, the tension or discomfort reduces, giving us a sense of relief. But as new needs emerge, the cycle begins again. This continuous process keeps our behavior active and purposeful, fueling our growth and development. Understanding this cycle is important because it explains why we act the way we do. It also helps teachers, leaders, and counselors inspire others by tapping into what motivates them. Recognizing the motivation cycle allows us to build focus, persistence, and resilience toward our goals. In essence, motivation is the force that keeps us moving forward, helping us achieve our potential and stay committed to our aspirations. Now, let's explore the key functions of motivation and why they are so vital in understanding human behavior. First, motivation acts as a trigger that initiates behavior. For example, when you're hungry, that feeling motivates you to eat, and curiosity motivates learning new things. It's like a spark that gets us moving. Next, motivation helps to direct our behavior. It gives purpose and focus to our energy and efforts. Think of an athlete who is motivated. They channel all their energy into training with a clear goal in mind. That sense of direction keeps them focused and purposeful. Another important function is sustaining effort. Motivation keeps us active and committed until we reach our goals. It helps us persist through challenges and setbacks. When things get tough, it's motivation that encourages us to keep going, to stay focused on the end result. Motivation also explains why people with similar abilities often perform differently. Two students might have the same intelligence, but the one with higher motivation is likely to achieve more. So, motivation influences the level of achievement we attain. Understanding motivation helps us interpret internal states, like emotions and behaviors. For instance, if someone is working hard, it might reflect ambition, whereas withdrawal could indicate fear or exhaustion. Recognizing these cues helps us better understand ourselves and others. Finally, motivation connects our inner needs to our actions. It transforms feelings like the need for recognition into purposeful behavior. When someone wants acknowledgement, they're driven to perform well, turning internal desires into tangible efforts. In summary, motivation is essential because it initiates, guides, sustains, explains, and connects our inner drives to our actions, shaping how we behave and achieve our goals. Motivation plays a crucial role in various aspects of our lives, and understanding its importance helps us see how it drives us forward. In education, for instance, motivation encourages students to learn actively, pay attention, and participate more fully in class. When students are motivated, they tend to retain information much better, which leads to more effective learning. Moving to the workplace, motivation is equally vital. It boosts productivity, sparks creativity, and increases job satisfaction. Motivated employees are more likely to perform efficiently and take pride in their work, which benefits both the individual and the organization. In our personal lives, motivation helps us set meaningful goals, work towards achieving them, and build confidence along the way. It also helps us develop resilience, so we can bounce back from setbacks and keep moving forward. When it comes to mental health, motivation reduces feelings of apathy and helplessness. It promotes a more optimistic outlook and encourages self-discipline, which are essential for maintaining emotional well-being. Ultimately, motivation is what turns our intentions into real actions. It transforms effort into achievement, making it the driving force behind success in all areas of life. Now, let's delve into the different types of motivation based on the source of the drive. First, we have intrinsic motivation. This kind of motivation comes from within the individual itself. When someone is intrinsically motivated, they engage in activities because they find them enjoyable, interesting, or personally rewarding. For example, reading a book for pleasure or learning a new skill just out of curiosity. These are driven by internal factors like curiosity, challenge, mastery, and autonomy. It's about doing something because it feels good or fulfilling on a personal level. On the other hand, we have extrinsic motivation. This type comes from outside the individual, from external rewards or pressures. So, people act to gain something tangible like a salary, good grades, or recognition. Or they might do something to avoid negative consequences, like obeying rules to prevent punishment. Think of working for a paycheck or studying hard to get good grades. Those are classic examples of extrinsic motivation. Understanding these two types helps us see why people are motivated in different ways, either because they find the activity itself rewarding or because of the rewards and pressures from outside. This distinction is fundamental to grasping how motivation influences our actions and behaviors overall. Now, let's explore the different types of motivation based on the origin of needs. First, we have primary or biological motivation. These are innate needs that are essential for our survival. Think about hunger, thirst, sleep, and the need to avoid pain. These are automatic responses triggered by our biological states. For example, when you're hungry, your body signals you to eat. When you're thirsty, you feel the urge to drink. These needs are unlearned and directly tied to our survival instincts. On the other hand, we have secondary or social and learned motivation. These are developed through experience and social interactions. They include motives like achievement, power, affiliation, and recognition. For instance, someone might work hard not just for money, but to gain prestige or success, or to seek approval from others. These needs are shaped by our environment and social context, and they influence our behavior in ways that go beyond biological survival. Understanding these types helps us see how motivation operates both from our innate biological drives and our social learning. This connection is key to understanding human behavior in a broader sense. Let's take a closer look at the different types of motivation based on the nature of the goal. First, we have positive motivation, which involves engaging in a behavior to gain a reward or a positive outcome. For example, someone studying hard might do so to earn appreciation or a promotion. It's all about the desire to achieve something good. On the other hand, there's negative motivation. This is when a person acts to avoid an unpleasant outcome or punishment. For instance, someone might work diligently to avoid criticism or failure. It's driven by the fear of negative consequences rather than the pursuit of positive rewards. Now, moving on to motivation based on strength or intensity. High motivation leads to strong effort, persistence, and ultimately, achieving the goal. You'll often see this in competitive or highly driven individuals who are very focused. Conversely, low motivation results in a lack of focus and minimal effort. This might happen due to disinterest, fatigue, or a lack of incentives. When motivation is low, progress tends to be slow or even absent, which highlights how crucial motivation is in guiding our actions toward success. Let's explore some key theories of motivation that help us understand why we do what we do. First, we have the drive reduction theory, proposed by Clark Hull in 1943. This theory is centered around the idea of maintaining homeostasis, which is our internal balance. Basically, behavior is driven by the need to reduce internal tension, or drives, that come from unmet biological needs. For example, when we're hungry, that creates a drive to eat. Once we've eaten, that drive subsides, restoring our balance. However, a limitation of this theory is that it doesn't really explain behaviors like curiosity or risk-taking, which don't directly reduce a drive. Next, we have the optimal arousal theory, introduced by Yerkes and Dodson in 1908. This theory suggests that we're motivated to maintain an optimal level of arousal, not too low, not too high. Think of it like a Goldilocks zone for performance. When arousal is too low, we might feel bored and not perform well. When it's just right, we perform at our best. But if arousal gets too high, we can become anxious and make mistakes. For instance, a moderate amount of stress before an exam can help us concentrate, but too much stress might make us nervous and impair our performance. Finally, there's the incentive theory, which shifts focus from internal needs to external rewards. According to this view, motivation is fueled by external incentives that attract us. When the expected reward is appealing, our motivation increases. For example, employees might work harder if they know there's a bonus or recognition waiting for them. This theory also explains how social and environmental factors influence our motivation. It works best when combined with drive theory, where our needs push us, but incentives pull us forward. Together, these theories give us a well-rounded understanding of what motivates human behavior, highlighting both internal drives and external rewards. Now, let's move on to the next set of theories that explain motivation. First, we have the cognitive theory, proposed by Feldman in 2015. This theory suggests that motivation isn't just about biological needs like hunger or thirst. Instead, it's heavily influenced by our thoughts, expectations, and beliefs. What does that mean in practice? Well, people tend to act when they believe that their actions will lead to a desired outcome. For example, a student might study hard because they believe that putting in effort will help them achieve good grades. So, motivation comes from our expectations and beliefs about what will happen as a result of our behavior. This theory also explains both intrinsic motivation, which comes from within, like personal satisfaction, and extrinsic motivation, which involves external rewards like praise or prizes. But it's important to remember that overusing external rewards can sometimes backfire. If someone starts doing something just for the reward, their internal or intrinsic motivation might actually decrease. Moving on, let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, proposed by Abraham Maslow in 1943. This is a very famous theory that explains motivation as a progression of needs, starting from the most basic and moving towards more advanced needs. The idea is that we have to satisfy our lower-level needs first before we can focus on higher-level ones. It's like climbing a ladder. The most basic needs are physiological, things like food, water, and sleep. Once those are met, we seek safety, security, stability, protection. Next, we look for love and belonging, forming relationships, feeling connected to others. After that, we desire esteem, achievements, recognition, respect from others. And finally, at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization, realizing our full potential and expressing our creativity. The key point is that once we fulfill one level, it no longer motivates us as much, and we move on to the next. For example, someone might first focus on finding food and safety, then on building relationships, and eventually on personal growth and self-fulfillment. So these theories help us understand that motivation is complex, involving both our thoughts and our basic needs, and they highlight how different factors influence what drives us to act. Now, let's talk about Alderfer's erg theory from 1972, which is a simplified version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Clayton Alderfer developed this model to make understanding human motivation a bit easier. Instead of a strict hierarchy, it suggests that 3 categories of needs can operate simultaneously, which makes sense because our needs are often overlapping and fluid. The first category is existence. This covers our basic material needs like food, water, shelter, and security. These are fundamental for our survival. Next is relatedness, which involves our social and interpersonal relationships, connecting with others, feeling valued, and belonging. Finally, we have growth, which is about self-development, creativity, and personal achievement. One of the key differences from Maslow's model is that Alderfer's erg theory allows for movement both up and down the categories. For example, if someone's growth needs are frustrated, say they're not able to achieve personal goals, they might redirect their focus toward relatedness or even back to basic existence needs. So, unlike Maslow's strict hierarchy, erg theory recognizes that if one need isn't being met, people can regress to more fundamental needs instead of moving strictly upward. This flexibility makes erg theory very relevant when analyzing real-world motivation, because it shows us that human needs are dynamic and can fluctuate based on circumstances. Let's take a closer look at Herzberg's two-factor theory from 1959. This theory was proposed by Frederick Herzberg to better understand what motivates people in the workplace. Essentially, it suggests that there are 2 different sets of factors that influence job satisfaction and dissatisfaction. First, we have hygiene factors, also known as maintenance factors. These don't directly motivate employees, but they are crucial for preventing dissatisfaction. Think about things like salary, job security, company policies, working conditions, and supervision. If these factors are missing or inadequate, employees tend to feel dissatisfied. However, if they are present and adequate, they don't necessarily motivate employees. They just create a neutral state, where employees are neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. For example, employees expect fair pay and safe working conditions. While these are essential, they won't necessarily make someone feel motivated, they just prevent dissatisfaction. On the other hand, we have motivational factors. These are what truly lead to job satisfaction and motivation when they are present. They include achievements, recognition, responsibility, opportunities for advancement, and personal growth. For instance, a teacher might feel motivated when they are appreciated for their good results or when they are given autonomy to make decisions about their work. These factors inspire employees and make them feel fulfilled. The key insight here is that simply eliminating dissatisfaction by improving hygiene factors won't necessarily motivate employees. To truly motivate, managers need to add these motivational factors. So, in summary, a successful approach involves focusing on both hygiene factors to maintain a baseline of satisfaction and motivation factors to inspire and engage employees. Let's take a closer look at McClelland's acquired needs theory from 1961. This theory was developed by David C. McClelland and emphasizes that our social motives are learned through experience. It suggests that each person develops 3 dominant needs, but importantly, these needs can vary from individual to individual. The first one is the need for achievement, or ENOC. This is all about the desire to excel, to take on responsibility, and to accomplish challenging goals. For example, entrepreneurs and competitive students often show a high ENOC because they thrive on overcoming obstacles and reaching new heights. Next is the need for affiliation, or NAF, which reflects a desire for friendly relationships and a sense of belonging. People with high NAF tend to prefer teamwork and value harmony in their interactions. The third is the need for power, or NPOW. This is the desire to influence, control, or lead others. Managers and leaders usually have a strong NPOW motivation because they find satisfaction in guiding and making decisions that impact others. The key insight here is that everyone has all 3 needs, but typically one of these needs tends to dominate person's personality and motivation. Recognizing which need drives an individual can be incredibly useful, especially when it comes to assigning tasks or roles that align with their motivational style. So, understanding these needs helps us better understand what motivates different people and how we can engage them more effectively. Let's wrap up with a quick summary and some key takeaways. First, we looked at the meaning of motivation. It's basically the inner force that activates, directs, and sustains our behavior towards specific goals. It helps us understand why people act the way they do, how much effort they put in, and how long they stick with something. Motivation arises from our needs, drives, and incentives, which all serve to guide our actions. Next, we examine the functions of motivation. It initiates our behavior and guides it toward particular goals. It also sustains our effort until we achieve those goals. Moreover, motivation explains why some people perform better than others and helps connect our internal needs with external actions, turning desire into achievement. Then, we looked at the different types of motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from within, like curiosity, enjoyment, or the desire to master a skill. Extrinsic motivation involves external rewards, such as money, grades, or recognition. We also have primary and secondary motivation, primary being biological needs, like hunger or thirst, and secondary being learned social needs, like status or approval. Lastly, motivation can be positive, striving for rewards, or negative, avoiding punishment. All these concepts tie together to show how motivation drives human behavior in complex but understandable ways. Understanding motivation helps us better grasp why people act as they do, and how we can influence or support those actions. Let's wrap up with some key takeaways and a summary of what we've learned about motivation. First, motivation can be understood through several major theories. For example, the drive reduction theory, proposed by Hull, suggests that our behavior is motivated by the desire to reduce internal tension caused by unmet biological needs. Think of it as a biological push to restore balance. Then there's the optimal arousal theory by Yerkes and Dodson, which tells us that performance is best at a moderate level of arousal, so neither too bored nor too overwhelmed. Incentive theory, on the other hand, emphasizes that external rewards can pull us toward certain behaviors, like earning a prize or recognition. Cognitive theory, from Feldman, highlights the role of our expectations and beliefs about outcomes. Our mindset really shapes how we act. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is probably one of the most well-known models, showing that motivation starts with basic needs like food and safety, then moves upward to psychological needs and finally self-fulfillment. Alderfer's erg theory condenses this into three core categories: existence, relatedness, and growth. Herzberg's two-factor theory explains that job satisfaction comes from motivators such as achievement and recognition, while hygiene factors like salary and work conditions prevent dissatisfaction. And finally, McClelland's acquired needs theory tells us that motivation is driven by needs for achievement, affiliation, and power. Now, moving on to some key insights. Motivation isn't just internal. External factors like incentives play a huge role too. Meaningful goals, recognition, and autonomy are powerful because they sustain motivation over time. When we understand what drives us and others, we can improve learning, performance, leadership, and even mental well-being. True motivation is a blend of personal satisfaction, doing something because it feels meaningful, and purposeful effort aimed at achieving goals. Remember, motivation is the energy behind every action. It turns our ideas into effort, effort into achievement, and achievement into ongoing growth. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content today, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit that notification bell to subscribe. That way, you'll stay updated with more amazing videos from Team Skill Sapphire. We really appreciate your support and interest. Remember, our goal is to share knowledge and inspire you to achieve more. Thanks again for being part of this journey with us.